The studio lights were dim, casting long shadows across the metal walls. Kira Yoon sat in her chair, checking her recording equipment one more time. She had been a war reporter for 15 years, but this interview felt different. Across from her sat Thexel Vor, a creature that still gave her nightmares. The Veltar veteran was massive, standing nearly 8 feet tall even when sitting. His body looked like a giant insect covered in dark armor. Scars crossed his face and arms, telling stories of battles fought long ago. His 4 arms rested on the table, each ending in sharp claws that could tear through metal. But it was his eyes that bothered Kira the most. They were large and black like a spider's eyes, and they never seemed to blink. "Are you ready to begin?" Kira asked, her voice steady despite her nerves. Thexel made a clicking sound with his mouth parts. It was how his species showed agreement. "I am ready, human reporter, though I wonder if your people are ready to hear what I have to say." Kira pressed the record button. Red lights glowed on cameras around the room. Millions of beings across the galaxy would watch this interview. The Veltar Dominion had agreed to let their war veterans speak freely. It was part of the peace treaty signed 5 years ago. "Tell us about yourself, Thexel," Kira said. "What was your role in the war?" The alien's mandibles moved as he spoke. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "I was a battle leader in the 3rd Assault Fleet. I commanded 10,000 warriors. We were the ones who first met your species in battle." He paused, his black eyes staring at something only he could see. "We thought it would be easy." The Veltar Dominion had conquered 12 species before humanity, Kira said. "Your military was considered the strongest in this part of the galaxy. What made you think fighting humans would be different?" Thexel made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was not a happy sound. "Your people were small, soft. You had no natural weapons, no armor on your skin. Your ships were primitive compared to ours. Your worlds had small populations. Every calculation said you would surrender after the first battle. But that's not what happened. No." The word came out like a hiss. "That is not what happened at all." Kira leaned forward. 5 years ago, you made a statement that shocked the galaxy. You said, and I quote, "Humans are not like other species. They are predators who learn to think." Can you explain what you meant? The veteran's 4 arms moved restlessly. It was a sign of stress in his species. Other species fight to live. Humans live to fight. When we attacked the Terran colonies, we expected fear. We expected them to run or hide or beg for mercy. Instead, they smiled. Smiled? Yes. When our ships appeared in their skies, when our armies landed on their worlds, when death came for them, humans smiled. They were happy to see us, not because they welcomed death, but because they finally had something worth killing. Kira felt a chill run down her spine. She had covered the war from the human side, but hearing it from a Veltar perspective was different. Terrifying, even. You've called the war the awakening in your people's language. What does that mean? Thexel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost afraid. For millions of years, my people hunted across the stars. We conquered worlds, enslaved species, took what we wanted. We thought we were the apex predators of the galaxy. His claws scraped against the metal table. Fighting humans taught us we were wrong. We were not predators. We were just bullies picking on the weak. Humans showed us what real predators look like. Can you give me an example? The first battle. We attacked a human colony ship called the Morning Star. It had 500 civilians and 20 military guards. Our attack ship had a crew of 2,000 warriors. The colony ship could not run. It could not hide, so it did something we had never seen before. What did it do? It turned around and attacked us. Kira blinked in surprise. A civilian ship attacked a Veltar warship? The human captain, a female named Go Yun, sent us a message before the battle. I still remember her words. She said, "You came here to hurt my people. Now I'm going to hurt you back." Then she rammed her ship into ours. She sacrificed her ship? No. That is what we thought at first. But it was not sacrifice. It was strategy. The Morning Star had mining charges on board. Captain Go set them, all to explode when her ship hit ours. The explosion destroyed both ships, but it also sent a message to every human in the galaxy. What message? Thexel's eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. That humans would rather die fighting than live, as slaves. But more than that, Captain Go proved that humans could think like predators. She saw our ship not as something to fear, but as prey to hunt. Even though she was smaller and weaker, she found a way to kill us. The war lasted 6 years after that, Kira said. Why? Didn't the Veltar simply overwhelm humanity with numbers? We tried. Oh, how we tried. For every human world we attacked, we sent 10 times more warriors than we needed for any other species. But humans do not fight like other species. They do not protect just their own lives or their own families. They protect everyone. And when humans protect something, they become monsters. Monsters? Yes. Beautiful, terrible monsters. I have seen a human mother hold off 50 Veltar warriors with nothing but a kitchen knife and pure rage because we threatened her children. I have seen human soldiers fight for days without sleep, without food, without hope, just because their friends needed time to escape. I have seen humans laugh while they were dying, because they knew their death would buy their people one more day of freedom. Kira swallowed hard. You sound almost admiring. I am. That is why I agreed to this interview. The galaxy needs to understand what humanity really is. Other species see humans expanding across the stars and they think it means conquest. They think humans want to rule over everyone else like we did. Don't they? Thexel shook his massive head. Humans do not conquer. They protect. Every world they claim, every colony they build, every ship they launch, it all serves one purpose: to make sure that no one can ever threaten what they love again. And that scares you? It should scare everyone. Because the thing about humans is this: they do not just protect their own species. They protect anyone who needs protecting. Any species that harms the innocent, that hurts the weak, that threatens the defenseless, will eventually face human wrath, and human wrath is the most terrible thing in the galaxy. The interview room was silent except for the hum of recording equipment. Kira looked at the alien veteran, seeing him not as a monster from her nightmares, but as something else, something almost pitiful. We will continue this interview tomorrow, she said finally. Is there anything you want to say to those watching? Thexel looked directly into the main camera. Learn from our mistakes. Do not make humans your enemy, because if you do, you will discover what it truly means to be prey. The red lights on the cameras went dark. The first part of the interview was over. The next day, Kira returned to the studio. She had spent the night reviewing old war footage, trying to understand the battle from the Veltar perspective. When she entered the room, Thexel was already waiting, staring at the wall with his unblinking, black eyes. "Yesterday you mentioned the first contact," Kira said as she sat down. "Can you tell us exactly what happened when your people first encountered humans?" Thexel shifted in his chair. The metal creaked under his weight. "I was aboard the flagship Korthak's Pride. Fleet Commander Zexith had chosen our target carefully. Intelligence reports said the humans had only basic space travel, no shields, no energy weapons, primitive nuclear missiles at best." "How many ships did you bring?" 200 warships, 50,000 warriors. We had destroyed entire civilizations with smaller forces." His mandibles clicked together nervously. "The human system had 12 small colonies and one main world. We expected total surrender within hours." Kira activated the holographic display between them. Old star charts appeared, showing the battle positions. "This is the Sol system, humanity's home. Your fleet came from which direction?" "From the outer edge, past the ice world they call Pluto. Our plan was simple. Destroy any military ships, then demand surrender. If they refused, we would destroy one colony every hour until they submitted." Thexel pointed to the display with one of his clawed hands. "We had done this many times before. It always worked. But something was different. This time, yes. When we entered the system, human ships came to meet us, not to surrender, not to negotiate, to fight." The veteran's voice grew quieter. "There were only 30 human ships against our 200. Any other species would have run or hidden behind their planet's defenses. But the humans formed a battle line and waited for us." "Who was commanding the human fleet?" "Admiral Moon Bin. I learned his name later, after studying human military records. He was old for a human, maybe 60 years. He had gray hair and calm eyes. When Fleet Commander Zexith opened communications to demand surrender, Admiral Moon just smiled." "What did he say?" "He said, 'You picked the wrong system to invade. You picked the wrong species to threaten. And you picked the wrong day to die.'" Thexel made that grinding sound that passed for laughter among his people. Then he closed the channel and attacked. The holographic display changed, showing the battle formations. Kira watched as the human ships moved in patterns that seemed random at first. The first thing we noticed was how fast human ships could move. Our intelligence was wrong about their technology, but speed was not the strangest thing about them. Thexel pointed to the display. "Look at how they fought. No other species fights like this." Kira studied the battle formations. "They're not trying to win a traditional engagement. They're trying to cause maximum damage while accepting heavy losses." "Exactly. Captain J. Ho commanded a destroyer called the Soul Defender. When our front line moved to engage, he did something no sane commander would ever do. He accelerated directly at our largest battleship." "A suicide run?" "That is what we thought. Captain Ho's ship was tiny compared to our battleship Thunder of Korth. It should have been destroyed by our weapons long before it reached us. But human ships are built differently than ours." "How so?" "Veltar ships are designed for conquest. Heavy armor, strong shields, many weapons. But they are also designed to protect the crew inside. Human ships are designed for war. They have just enough armor to reach their target and just enough weapons to hurt their enemy. Everything else is removed to make room for engines and fuel." The display showed the Soul Defender racing toward the Veltar battleship, taking hit after hit but never slowing down. Captain Ho's ship was burning. Half his crew was dead. His weapons were destroyed. But he never stopped coming at us. When He was close enough, he fired every missile he had left and then rammed his ship into our battleship's engine section. Both ships were destroyed. The sole defender was vaporized instantly, but our battleship lost all power and began drifting. Then the real horror began. Thexel's 4 arms moved restlessly. The other human ships saw what Captain Ho had done. Instead of being afraid, they became excited. They started targeting our engines instead of trying to destroy our ships completely. They wanted to disable your fleet, not destroy it. No. Destroying our ships would have been merciful. They wanted us helpless, floating in space, unable to move, unable to fight back. Then they boarded us. Kira felt her blood run cold. Boarded. Veltar warships? Humans in combat armor, carrying weapons I had never seen before. They cut through our hull like it was paper. The first group that boarded my ship was led by a human female named Kim Soo. She was small, maybe half my size, but she moved through our corridors like death itself. How did they fight on board your ships? Like demons. Veltar warriors are strong. We have natural armor and deadly claws. In close combat, one of us should be able to kill 3 or 4 humans easily. But humans do not fight like individuals. They fight like a pack. Thexel stood up and began pacing, his claws clicking. On the metal floor, Sergeant Kim and her team moved through my ship like they had been born on it. They knew every weakness in our armor, every blind spot in our defenses. When we tried to corner them, they disappeared into the ventilation systems. When we split up to search for them, they appeared behind us and cut us down. How long did the boarding action last? 3 hours. In 3 hours, a team of 20 humans took control of a ship with a crew of 800 Veltar warriors. Not by destroying us all, but by capturing key positions. The bridge, the engine room, the weapons control center. They cut off our heads and left our body helpless. What happened to the crew? Those who surrendered were locked in the cargo holds. Those who kept fighting were killed. But here is the strangest part. Sergeant Kim and her team did not hurt anyone who was not fighting. When they found our wounded, they gave them medical treatment. When they discovered our food storage, they made sure prisoners were fed. Kira frowned. That doesn't sound like the behavior of conquering soldiers. That is what confused us so much. Humans fight like the most vicious predators in the galaxy, but they also show mercy to defeated enemies. They kill without hesitation when they need to, but they also heal without question when the fighting stops. How did the rest of the battle go? Disaster. Total disaster. By the time the boarding actions were complete, Admiral Moon's fleet had captured or disabled 60 of our ships. The rest of our fleet tried to retreat, but human ships are faster than ours. Only 30 Veltar ships escaped the system. Out of 200. Yes. The humans had 30 ships when the battle started. By the end, they had captured more ships than they began with. Thexel sat back down, his massive frame seeming to shrink. Fleet Commander Zexith was among the captured. I spoke with him before he was sent to a human prison camp. What did he say? He said, "We were not fighting soldiers. We were fighting an entire species that has been preparing for war their whole lives." The veteran looked directly at Kira. That was when we realized the truth about humans. What truth? Every other species we had conquered fought to protect their current way of life. They wanted to keep what they had. But humans were not fighting to protect what they had. They were fighting to protect what they might someday have. Their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. They were fighting for people who had not even been born yet. And that changed everything? It changed everything. Because when you are fighting someone who is protecting their own life, you might convince them to surrender if the cost becomes too high. But when you are fighting someone who is protecting their children's future, they will never stop. Never surrender. Never give up. Thexel looked at the camera again. That was our first lesson about humanity. We thought we were attacking a weak species that would submit to superior force. Instead, we had awakened sleeping predators who had been waiting their entire history for someone to threaten what they loved. Tomorrow we will talk about what happened after that first battle, Kira said to the camera. How the war spread across the galaxy, and how humanity began to show the Veltar Dominion what it truly meant to be hunted. The interview room fell silent as the recording ended. Kira arrived early for the third day of interviews. She had been receiving messages from across the galaxy. Some praised her for getting Thexel to speak openly. Others accused her of giving propaganda to humanity's former enemies. She ignored them all and focused on the story. When Thexel entered the studio, she noticed he moved more slowly than before. Talking about the war seemed to be taking a toll on the old veteran. Today I want to discuss Kepler Station, Kira said once the cameras were rolling. Many consider it the turning point of the war. Thexel's eyes dimmed. In his species, this was a sign of sadness or regret. Kepler Station, yes. That is where I learned that humans do not know how to surrender. Can you set the scene for us? What was Kepler Station? A mining facility in the Kepler system. It had been built inside a large asteroid to protect it from radiation. The station mined rare metals needed for human ship construction. When we captured the system, cutting off that supply became a priority. How many defenders were on the station? 3,000 humans. Most were miners and engineers. Only 500 were actual soldiers. Commander Ye Jin was in charge of the defense. Thexel paused. I had never heard of her before the siege. After the siege, every Veltar warrior knew her name. What was your role in the attack? I commanded. The ground assault forces. 50,000 Veltar warriors against 3,000 humans in a confined space. Our battle computers calculated the station would fall in less than 6 hours. Kira brought up holographic images of Kepler Station. It looked like a small city built inside a hollow asteroid, with narrow corridors connecting different sections. The attack began with a standard orbital bombardment, Thexel continued. We destroyed the station's external weapons and damaged their communications. Then we landed our troops and began the assault. What happened when your forces entered the station? Horror. Pure horror. The veteran's mandibles clicked rapidly. The humans had turned every corridor into a killing ground. They knew we would come in large numbers, so they made it impossible for us to use our numbers effectively. How? The station's corridors were only wide enough for 3 Veltar warriors to walk side by side, but humans had built hidden positions along every passage. When we advanced, they would let the first group pass, then attack from behind, while firing at the next group from the front. Thexel stood and began pacing again. Commander Jin had removed sections of the floor and ceiling. When we tried to advance, humans would drop from above or emerge from below. We never knew where the next attack would come from. Surely your superior numbers should have made a difference eventually. Numbers mean nothing when you cannot bring them to bear. The humans controlled which battles we fought and where we fought them. They would attack us in narrow passages where only a few of us could fight at once, then disappear before we could respond with larger forces. How long did this go on? Days, weeks, Every meter we gained cost us dozens of warriors. And the humans never seemed to run out of ammunition or supplies. How was that possible? The station was a mining facility. It had workshops, manufacturing equipment, chemical processing plants. The humans were making weapons and ammunition faster than we could force them to use it. Thexel's voice grew quieter. But that was not the worst part. What was the worst part? Commander Jin's daily broadcasts. Kira leaned forward. Broadcasts? Every day at the same time, the human commander would speak to our forces over the station's communication system. She would give us casualty reports. How many Veltar warriors had died that day? How many the day before? Running totals for the entire siege. Psychological warfare. More than that, she was keeping score, like it was a game to her. Commander, Jin would announce new records. Yesterday, we killed more of you than any previous day. This week, we have killed more of you than the entire first month. She sounded happy about it. That must have been demoralizing for your troops. Terrifying. She was not just reporting deaths. She was celebrating them. What kind of being takes joy in killing? Thexel sat back down heavily. But then she would do something even stranger. What? She would also announce how many humans had died defending the station. And when she spoke of her own people's deaths, her voice was full of sadness and respect. She mourned her own dead while celebrating ours. Did you ever try to communicate with her directly? Yes. On the 15th day of the siege, I sent her a message offering surrender terms. If the humans gave up, we would spare the civilian population and send the military personnel to prison camps. What was her response? She laughed. Commander Jin actually laughed. Then she said, "You still do not understand what you are fighting. We are not defending a mining station. We are defending the idea that humans cannot be conquered. Even if you kill every person on this station, that idea will live on. And ideas are much harder to kill than people." How did the siege continue? We changed tactics. Instead of trying to take the station quickly, we decided to starve them out. We surrounded Kepler Station completely and waited for their food and supplies to run out. Did that work? No. The humans had prepared for a long siege. They had stockpiled food for months. More importantly, they used the station's manufacturing equipment to create hydroponic gardens. They were growing their own food while fighting us. What about medical supplies? Commander Jin had a medical officer named Dr. Park Q. He performed surgery while battles raged in the next room. When they ran out of medical supplies, Dr. Park began making new ones from mining chemicals and industrial equipment. That seems impossible. Humans do not accept impossible. They had a saying during the siege, "Impossible just means we have not figured out how to do it yet." Thexel made his grinding laugh sound. By the 4th week, Dr. Park was performing better surgery than most Veltar military hospitals. How did your troops react to the prolonged siege? They became afraid. Not of dying. Veltar warriors do not fear death. They became afraid of what humans might do to them if captured, because we had learned that humans treat war differently than we do. How so? When Veltar warriors capture enemies, we usually kill them quickly or take them as slaves. When humans capture enemies, they study them. They learn how their enemies think, how they fight, what they fear. Then they use that knowledge to fight better. Did the humans capture any of your troops during the siege? Yes. Several scouting parties were taken alive. The humans questioned them extensively, but they also fed them, gave them medical treatment, and allowed them to send messages to their families. It was very confusing for our warriors. Why confusing? because humans were being kind to prisoners while killing their comrades with great efficiency. It made no sense. How can the same beings who show mercy also show such ruthless skill in battle? How did the siege finally end? General Su Wan arrived with a human relief fleet on the 47th day. But it was not really a rescue mission. It was a trap. A trap? Commander Jin had been in contact with human command the entire time. The siege was not just about defending the station. It was about keeping our forces concentrated in one place so General Su's fleet could destroy them all at once. The humans used their own people as bait? Yes. 3,000 humans held 50,000 Veltar warriors in place for 47 days, allowing General Su to position his fleet for a devastating attack. Thexel's voice was full of reluctant admiration. When the human fleet arrived, they did not just attack our ships. They had studied our battle formations during the siege and knew exactly where each of our vessels would be. What was the result? Complete destruction of our third fleet. 40,000 Veltar warriors died in the space battle. Another 8,000 died during the final assault on the station. Only 2,000 of us survived to be taken prisoner. And the human casualties? 1,200 dead. 1,800 wounded. Commander Jin was among the wounded but survived. Thexel looked directly at the camera. 3,000 humans had defeated 50,000 Veltar warriors in a battle that lasted 47 days. What? Did you learn from Kepler Station? That humans do not just fight to win battles, they fight to win wars. Every action, every sacrifice, every death serves a larger purpose. Commander Jin was not just defending a mining station. She was teaching the galaxy that humans could not be defeated by force alone. And that lesson was learned by us, yes, but apparently not by everyone. Thexel's expression grew grim. After the siege, I spent time in a human prison camp. The guards were respectful and professional. They fed us well and allowed us to practice our religious ceremonies. But they also made sure we understood what we had learned, which was that humans fight the way they do not because they enjoy violence, but because they love peace. They become monsters in war so their children can live safely in peace. And they are very, very good at being monsters when they need to be. The interview room fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Tomorrow, Kira knew, they would discuss what happened when the war moved to human-occupied worlds, and how the Veltar learned that humans were even more dangerous when fighting on familiar ground. The fourth day of interviews began differently. Thexel entered the studio moving like a wounded animal. His usual confident posture was gone, replaced by nervous glances at shadows in the corners of the room. "Are you all right?" Kira asked before they started recording. "Talking about New Soul brings back memories," the veteran replied. "Bad memories. We can postpone if you need time." "No. The galaxy needs to hear this story, especially the part about Park Min and Lee Da." Thexel settled into his chair as the cameras began recording. "Today we discuss why humans are more dangerous when you think you have defeated them. New Sol was a human colony world that the Veltar successfully occupied," Kira said. "Tell us about that campaign." It was 1 year after Kepler Station. High Command decided we needed a victory to restore morale. New Sol seemed perfect. A farming world with 2 million human colonists and only a small military garrison. What made it seem like an easy target? The planet had no orbital defenses and only one spaceport. The colonists were civilians, farmers, teachers, shopkeepers. When our fleet arrived, the human garrison commander surrendered immediately to avoid civilian casualties. So the occupation was successful? At first, yes. We landed 50,000 troops and took control of all major cities. The human military forces laid down their weapons. The colonial government agreed to cooperate. For 3 weeks, everything went according to plan. What changed? The forests. Thexel's mandibles clicked nervously. New Sol had vast forests covering most of the continents. We knew some humans had fled to the forests when we arrived, but we thought they would either surrender or die from exposure. But that's not what happened. No, the humans in the forests were not hiding. They were organizing. Their leader was a former colonial security officer named Park Min. He had served in the human military before becoming a colonist. What kind of resistance did they mount? At first, just minor sabotage. Damaged communication lines, stolen supplies, blocked roads. Annoying but not dangerous. Then they began attacking our patrols. Thexel stood and began his usual pacing. The first attack happened at dawn on day 22 of the occupation. A patrol of 10 Veltar warriors was found dead on a forest road. They had been killed with primitive weapons, knives, arrows, clubs. Primitive weapons killed Veltar warriors? The humans knew exactly where to strike. Our armor protects most of our body, but there are weak points. The humans had studied captured Veltar equipment and learned where these weak points were. How did your forces respond? We sent larger patrols, 50 warriors instead of 10. The humans simply attacked bigger groups, but they never fought fair battles. They would strike from hiding, kill as many as they could, then disappear before we could fight back. Classic guerrilla warfare. More than that, Park Min was not just fighting us. He was teaching the entire planet how to fight us. Every attack was recorded and shared with other resistance groups. Every successful tactic was copied across the planet. Kira pulled up a map of New Sol on the holographic display. How widespread did the resistance become? Within 2 months, every forest on the planet was controlled by human fighters. We held the cities and major roads, but everywhere else belonged to them. Thexel pointed to the display. This is where Li Da operated, the northern continent. Tell us about Li Da. She was different from Park Min. Where he was a soldier who became a rebel, she was a civilian who became a warrior. Before the war, Li Da taught children in a small farming town. After we occupied her town, she led the local resistance. What made her so effective? She understood our psychology. Li Da knew that Veltar warriors are predators, and predators hunt by instinct. So she turned our hunting instincts against us. How? She would leave trails for us to follow. Evidence of resistance camps, abandoned supplies, footprints leading deeper into the forest. Our patrols would follow these trails thinking they were tracking fleeing humans. But it was a trap? Always. Li Da would lead our patrols exactly where she wanted them to go. Into valleys where the only escape was through narrow passes. Onto hilltops where they were visible from all directions. Into swamps where our heavy armor became a disadvantage. What happened to these patrols? They died. All of them. Li Da never let a single patrol return to report what they had found. From our perspective, patrols would simply vanish into the forest and never come back. Thexel sat back down, his 4 arms wrapped around his torso. After 3 months of occupation, we had lost more warriors on New Sol than in any previous campaign. But the worst part was not knowing where they were or how they were dying. The psychological impact? Devastating. Veltar warriors began refusing patrol assignments. Some requested transfers to other worlds. Others simply deserted their posts rather than enter the forests. How did the resistance coordinate their attacks? That was the genius of Park Min and Li Da. They had turned the entire planet into their communication network. Children would carry messages between towns. Farmers would hide weapons in their fields. Shopkeepers would pass intelligence about our movements. The civilian population was supporting the resistance? More than supporting. The civilian population was the resistance. Every human on New Sol was either a fighter or someone who helped fighters. Even the humans who cooperated with our occupation forces were secretly working against us. Can you give us a specific example? The baker in the capital city. Every day he delivered bread to our garrison. Every day he smiled and bowed and acted grateful for our protection. For 6 months he was the model cooperative civilian. But his bread deliveries allowed him to observe our daily routines. Guard changes, patrol schedules, supply deliveries. He memorized everything and passed it to the resistance. When Park Min attacked our main supply depot, he knew exactly when the guards would be distracted and where the most valuable supplies were stored. How did you discover the baker's role? We did not discover it. He told us. After the resistance successfully destroyed our supply depot, the baker came to our commander and confessed his role in the attack. Why would he confess? Because his job was finished. The resistance no longer needed intelligence about our routines because they were about to launch their final offensive. The baker was telling us that our time on New Sol was over. What? Was this final offensive? Coordinated attacks across the entire planet. Every resistance group striking at the same time. But not random attacks. Park Min and Lee Da had spent months planning this operation. What was their strategy? To make us choose between staying and fighting or leaving and living. They attacked our communication centers first, cutting us off from reinforcements. Then they hit our supply depots, leaving us without food or ammunition. Finally, they surrounded our major bases and offered us a choice. What choice? Surrender and be allowed to leave the planet, or fight and die. But here is what made it truly terrifying. They gave us exactly 24 hours to decide. Why was the time limit terrifying? Because it proved how completely they controlled the situation. Park Min and Lee Da were not desperate rebels making a last desperate attack. They were generals who had spent months preparing for this moment. They knew exactly how long it would take us to organize a defense. They knew we could not get help from other worlds in time. They knew we did not have enough supplies for a long siege. How did your commander respond? He chose to fight. 10,000 Veltar warriors against what we thought were a few thousand human rebels. It should have been an easy victory. But it wasn't. The humans had been preparing for this battle. For months, every approach to our bases was mined. Every road was blocked. Every hill overlooked by hidden snipers. When we tried to break out, we found that the entire planet had become a trap designed specifically for us. How long did the fighting last? 3 days. By the end, only 2,000 Veltar warriors were still alive. The rest were dead or wounded. Our commander finally surrendered when Lee Da sent him a message. What did the message say? She listed the names and service records of every Veltar warrior on the planet. Not just the ones who were still alive, but the ones who had died during the occupation. She knew more about our forces than our own command structure did. How was that possible? Because for 8 months, the humans had been watching us, learning about us, studying us like laboratory specimens. They knew our strengths and weaknesses better than we did. What happened to the surviving Veltar forces? We were given medical treatment and food, then loaded onto ships and sent home. But before we left, Park Min and Lee Da made sure we understood something important. What? That they had been gentle with us. The resistance could have killed every Veltar warrior on New Sol, but they chose to let some of us live, not because they could not kill us all, but because they wanted us to carry a message back to the Dominion. What message? That humans do not want to conquer other species. They just want to be left alone. But if you attack their worlds, if you threaten their families, if you try to make them slaves, they will show you what it means to be hunted by a species that has spent its entire evolution learning how to kill. Kira noticed that Thexel looked older each day. The weight of sharing these memories seemed to be aging the veteran before her eyes. Today, his movements were slower and his voice quieter than usual. Yesterday you mentioned individual humans who became legendary among Veltar forces, Kira said as the cameras began recording. Tell us about Sergeant Wu Nam. Thexel was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Sergeant Nam was not supposed to be a warrior. He was a medic. His job was to heal, not to kill. But he taught us that when you threaten what a human protects, it does not matter what their job is supposed to be. Where did you encounter him? The Battle of Henderson's Ridge on the world called Haven. It was a major offensive. 30,000 Veltar warriors against 8,000 human defenders. The humans had a field hospital set up in a valley behind their main lines. What was your role in the battle? I commanded the flanking force. Our job was to circle around the human lines and attack their medical facilities, not to kill wounded soldiers, but to capture their medical supplies and equipment. Without medical support, the human defenders would be forced to withdraw. That sounds like a reasonable military strategy. It was. Field hospitals are not supposed to be defended by combat troops. They are protected by medical personnel who are not allowed to fight under Galactic War conventions. We expected to capture the facility without resistance, but Sergeant Nam was there? Yes. He was the senior medic on duty when our forces approached the hospital. According to the records I read later, Sergeant Nam had been a combat medic for 12 years. He had served in conflicts across human space, always following the medical oath to do no harm. What changed? We did. When our advanced scouts reached the hospital, they found Sergeant Nam treating wounded human soldiers. Our commander sent a message demanding that all medical personnel surrender and evacuate the wounded. What was Sergeant Nam's response? He sent a message back saying that he had wounded soldiers who could not be moved safely. He requested 6 hours to stabilize the critical cases before evacuation. A reasonable request. Our commander refused. He gave Sergeant Nam 30 minutes to evacuate, or our forces would storm the hospital. The medic's response was unexpected. What did he say? He said, I took an oath to protect the wounded, all wounded, even yours, but if you attack this hospital, you will learn that I also know how to make wounded. Thexel stood and began pacing. Our commander thought it was an empty threat. What could one medic do against a battalion of Veltar warriors? So after 30 minutes, we attacked. What happened? Hell. Pure hell. Sergeant Nam had spent those 30 minutes preparing the hospital for siege. He had moved all the critical patients to the most protected areas. He had barricaded the entrances. He had armed himself with whatever weapons were available. What weapons could he find in a medical facility? That was what made him so terrifying. Sergeant Nam used medical equipment as weapons. Surgical lasers became sniper rifles. Operating tables became barricades. Medical chemicals became explosives. But he was just one person against an entire battalion. Yes. But he knew that hospital better than we knew our own ships. Every corridor, every room, every hiding place, and he used his medical knowledge to kill us more efficiently than any soldier could have. How so? Sergeant Nam knew exactly where to hit a Veltar warrior to cause maximum damage. He knew which organs were most vital, which arteries carried, the most blood, which bones were easiest to break. He was not just fighting us. He was performing surgery on us. Lethal surgery. Kira felt her stomach turn. That's horrible. The worst part was that he was still trying to save lives while taking them. When Veltar warriors were wounded but not killed, Sergeant Nam would treat their injuries to keep them alive. Then he would use their wounded bodies as messages to the rest of our forces. What kind of messages? He would perform field surgery on wounded Veltar warriors, then send them back to our lines with notes attached. The notes described exactly how he had injured each warrior and what we could expect if we continued the attack. Psychological warfare. More than that, Sergeant Nam was teaching us about human medicine while demonstrating human violence. He would send back a warrior with a precisely damaged limb, along with detailed medical notes explaining how long the injury would take to heal and what complications might arise. Why would he do that? To show us that he understood our biology better than we did, that he could hurt us in ways we had never imagined, but also heal us if we stopped threatening his patients. How long did the siege last? 6 hours. In 6 hours, one human medic killed 47 Veltar warriors and wounded 63 others. But he never lost a single patient. Not one wounded human soldier died while Sergeant Nam was defending them. How was he finally defeated? He was not defeated. We retreated. An entire battalion retreated from one medic? Yes. Because Sergeant Nam made us realize something terrible. If this is what a human medic could do when his patients were threatened, what could human soldiers do? What could human generals do? What could human mothers do if their children were in danger? What ended the siege? A message from Human Command. They told Sergeant Nam that reinforcements were arriving and he should prepare for evacuation. But instead of leaving immediately, he sent us one final message. What did it say? He offered to treat our wounded. After 6 hours of fighting, after killing and wounding more than 100 of our warriors, Sergeant Nam offered to provide medical care to our injured troops. Did your commander accept? Yes. Because many of our wounded were dying, and we had no medics skilled enough to save them. Sergeant Nam had proven that he understood Veltar physiology better than our own doctors. So he treated Veltar wounded? For 3 hours, he worked to save the lives of warriors who had been trying to kill him. He operated on the most seriously injured first, regardless of whether they were human or Veltar. He used his medical supplies to help enemies who had come to destroy his hospital. Why would he help people who had attacked him? Because he was a medic. His job was to heal, and he was very good at his job. But when people threatened his patients, he became something else, something that could kill with the same precision he used to heal. What happened when the human reinforcements arrived? Sergeant Nam gathered his remaining medical supplies and prepared to leave with the last of the wounded humans. Before he left, he gave our field commander a complete medical report on every Veltar warrior he had treated. A medical report. Detailed. Notes on their injuries, treatment provided, and recommended follow-up care, as if they were his own patients rather than enemy soldiers. Then he said something that no Veltar warrior who was there will ever forget. What did he say? He said, "I hope we do not meet again under these circumstances. But if we do, remember that I tried to warn you what would happen if you threatened my patients." How did this incident affect Veltar forces? It changed everything. Before Henderson's Ridge, we thought human medical personnel were non-combatants who could be safely ignored. After Sergeant Nam, we learned that there are no non-combatants among humans. There are only humans who are currently healing, and humans who are currently killing. That seems like an exaggeration. Is it? Sergeant Nam was not a Special Forces soldier. He was not trained for combat. He was a medic whose only job was to save lives. But when his patients were threatened, he became the most effective killer our battalion had ever faced. What happened to Sergeant Nam after the battle? He continued serving as a medic for the rest of the war. He saved thousands of lives, both human and non-human, but every Veltar commander knew his name and his reputation. Units would sometimes withdraw from entire sectors if they learned that Sergeant Nam was providing medical support to human forces in the area, because they were afraid of one medic? Because they were afraid of what one medic represented. If humans could fight like that while still trying to heal their enemies, what did that say about their capacity for both mercy and violence? Thexel looked directly at the camera. Sergeant Nam taught us that humans do not separate their roles in life. A human medic is still human. A human teacher is still human. A human farmer is still human. And when you threaten what any human protects, you face not just their professional skills, but their entire species' capacity for war. Tomorrow, we will discuss human engineering and technological adaptation, Kira said to conclude the day's interview. How humans turned civilian equipment into weapons of war, and how they improved captured Veltar technology beyond its original specifications. The studio fell silent as the cameras stopped recording. Thexel remained motionless in his chair, lost in memories of a medic who had taught an entire alien species what it meant to face human determination. The sixth day brought a different energy to the studio. Thexel seemed more alert, almost eager to share this particular story. When Kira asked about it, he explained that today's topic was less about individual tragedy and more about human ingenuity. Today, we discuss the Battle of the Centauri shipyards, Kira said as the cameras began recording. This was where the Veltar first encountered what humans called the Phoenix Protocol. Yes, Thexel said, his mandibles clicking in what might have been excitement. If yesterday was about human determination, today is about human creativity. The Centauri battle showed us that humans do not just use tools. They become one with their tools. Can you explain what the Centauri shipyards were? The largest human ship construction facility outside the Sol system. It could build 100 warships at the same time. When we captured it, we thought we had crippled human naval production for the entire war. But you were wrong? Completely wrong. We captured empty space docks and abandoned construction equipment. The humans had evacuated all completed ships and most of the workers. What we thought was a great victory was actually an elaborate trap. A trap? The humans had left behind their most valuable asset. Dr. Kim Rowe, their chief engineer and tech. Specialist Choi Bin, the facility's systems expert. They volunteered to stay behind with a small team of technicians. Why would they do that? To activate the Phoenix Protocol. We learned later that this was a human contingency plan for turning any captured facility into a weapon against its captors. Kira brought up holographic images of the Centauri shipyards. The facility was massive, stretching across several asteroids connected by docking tubes and construction platforms. What happened when your forces occupied the shipyards? At first, nothing unusual. We stationed 10,000 warriors to guard the facility and began studying human shipbuilding techniques. Our engineers were impressed by the efficiency of human construction methods. How long were you in control of the facility? 3 weeks. During that time, Dr. Kim and Specialist Choi appeared to cooperate fully with our occupation forces. They showed our engineers how the human equipment worked. They provided technical manuals and construction blueprints. They were sharing military secrets with you. That is what we thought. Dr. Kim seemed eager to demonstrate human technology. She would spend hours explaining how human ships were built, what materials were used, how the assembly lines operated. But she had ulterior motives? Dr. Kim was not sharing secrets. She was learning ours. Every question she answered, she asked 3 questions in return. What were Veltar ships made of? How did our weapons work? What were the weak points in our armor and shields? She was conducting intelligence gathering while pretending to cooperate. More than that, Dr. Kim and Specialist Choi were redesigning the entire facility while they taught us about it. They were preparing to turn human shipbuilding equipment into anti-Veltar weapons. How? The shipyards had massive industrial equipment, asteroid miners capable of breaking apart small moons, assembly robots that could construct 100-meter ship sections, fusion reactors that powered the entire facility. All civilian equipment. In human hands, there is no such thing as civilian equipment. Dr. Kim showed us this on the 22nd day of our occupation. Thexel stood and activated the holographic display, pointing to different sections of the shipyard complex. The attack began with the asteroid miners. These machines were designed to break apart space rocks for raw materials. Dr. Kim had reprogrammed them to target our ships instead of asteroids. Mining equipment attacked warships? Industrial mining lasers are much more powerful than military weapons. They are designed to cut through solid rock and metal for hours without stopping. When focused on Veltar ship hulls, they cut through our armor like it was paper. How many ships did you lose? 7 destroyers and 2 cruisers in the first hour. But the mining lasers were just the beginning. Specialist Choi had turned the assembly robots into fighting machines. Construction robots became soldiers? Worse than soldiers. These robots were designed to build ships, so they understood exactly how ships could be taken apart. They knew where every vital system was located, how to disable engines, how to breach life support systems. They boarded your ships? Yes. The assembly robots were designed to work in space, so they could operate in vacuum conditions better than most Veltar warriors. They would attach themselves to our ship hulls and begin systematically dismantling our vessels while we were still inside them. That's terrifying. The worst part was how efficient they were. These robots had been programmed to build ships as quickly as possible. When Dr. Kim reprogrammed them to destroy ships, they brought the same speed and precision to destruction that they had used for construction. How did your forces respond? We tried to fight back, but every system we relied on had been compromised. Specialist Choi had spent 3 weeks learning about our communication protocols, our computer systems, our navigation equipment. He had sabotaged your technology. Not sabotaged. Improved. That was the truly terrifying part. Choi had made our systems work better than before, but he had also built hidden control mechanisms into every improvement. He could control your ships when he chose to. On the 2nd day of the Phoenix Protocol activation, Choi demonstrated his control by taking command of one of our destroyers. He flew it in perfect formation with our other ships for 6 hours, then suddenly turned it around and used it to attack our own fleet. Using a captured Veltar ship against other Veltar ships? Using a Veltar ship that he had improved beyond our original specifications. The ship flew faster, fired more accurately, and had better shields than when we built it. Choi had turned our own technology against us and made it more effective in the process. How long did the battle last? 4 days. By the end, we had lost 30 ships and 8,000 warriors. The humans had converted an entire shipbuilding facility into the most effective weapons platform either side had deployed during the war. What ended the battle? Dr. Kim sent us a message on the 4th day. She offered to negotiate a ceasefire. What were her terms? Complete withdrawal of all Veltar forces from the Centauri system. In exchange, she would stop the Phoenix Protocol and allow our surviving ships to leave safely. Did your commander accept? He had no choice. We were losing ships faster than we could deploy them. But before we left, Dr. Kim demonstrated something that changed our entire understanding of human capabilities. What did she demonstrate? She rebuilt one of our destroyed ships, in 12 hours using nothing but shipyard equipment and salvaged materials. Dr. Kim and her team reconstructed a Veltar destroyer that had been completely destroyed by asteroid mining lasers. They rebuilt a destroyed ship in 12 hours? Not just rebuilt, improved. The new ship was faster, stronger, and more heavily armed than the original. Dr. Kim had taken our design and made it better while building it from scrap metal. Why would she show you this? To prove a point. She wanted us to understand that humans do not just use technology. They understand it at a fundamental level. They can take any machine, any system, any tool, and make it do things its original designers never imagined. What was the strategic impact of the Phoenix Protocol? It changed how we thought about capturing human facilities. Before Centauri, we assumed that occupying human infrastructure would give us an advantage. After Centauri, we realized that human infrastructure was more dangerous to us than human armies. Because the humans could turn it against you? Because humans think differently about technology than we do. Veltar build tools to perform specific functions. Humans build tools that can be adapted to perform any function they need. Can you give another example? The communication equipment in the shipyards. We thought it was just for coordinating ship construction. Dr. Kim turned it into a surveillance network that monitored all Veltar fleet movements in 3-star systems. She was spying on your forces. For months, every ship movement, every patrol route, every supply convoy. Dr. Kim had been feeding intelligence to human command since the day we occupied the facility. The Phoenix Protocol was not a desperate last stand. It was the culmination of a months-long intelligence operation. What happened to Dr. Kim and Specialist Choi after the battle? They were evacuated with the rest of their team when we withdrew. But before they left, they did something that still confuses our military analysts. What? They left us complete technical manuals for all the improvements they had made to our technology. Every modification, every enhancement, every system, upgrade. They gave us the knowledge to build better ships. Why would they help their enemies? I think Dr. Kim wanted us to understand that the technology gap between our species was not what we thought it was. Humans were not using better tools than us. They were just better at using tools. Thexel sat back down, his 4 arms moving in complex gestures. The Phoenix Protocol taught us that humans do not distinguish between civilian and military technology. In human hands, everything is a potential weapon, but also a potential tool for building something better. Tomorrow, we will discuss the final major battle of the war, Kira said to the camera. The Battle of Sol, where humanity made its last stand at Earth itself. The 7th day of interviews felt different from all the others. Thexel entered the studio with what humans might recognize as reluctance. His movements were slow and deliberate, as if each step required great effort. Today we discuss the Battle of Sol, Kira said once the cameras were recording. The final major engagement of the war, fought in humanity's home system. Yes, Thexel replied, his voice barely above a whisper. The battle that taught us we had been fighting the wrong war for 6 years. Can you explain what you mean by that? We thought we were fighting a war of conquest. We believed that if we could defeat human military forces and occupy their key worlds, they would surrender. The Battle of Sol showed us that we were not fighting humans for territory or resources. We were fighting them for the right to exist. Set the scene for us. What led to the assault on Earth? After 6 years of war, the Veltar High Command made a desperate decision. Human forces were advancing on multiple fronts. Our colonies were being liberated one by one. Our fleet strength was declining while human ship production continued to increase. So you decided to attack the human homeworld? It was supposed to be the final stroke that would end the war. If we could capture or destroy Earth, human resistance would collapse. Every military computer model showed that no species would continue fighting after losing their birth world. But humans are not like every other species. No, they are not. Thexel's mandibles clicked nervously. We assembled the largest fleet in Veltar history. 2,000 warships, 500,000 warriors. It should have been enough to conquer any world in the galaxy. What was the human defensive strength? Admiral Bohan commanded the Sol defense. Fleet. She had 200 ships and maybe 50,000 crew members. By every calculation, we outnumbered her 10-1. Those odds should have guaranteed a Veltar victory. Should have. But Admiral Han understood something that our commanders did not. She was not defending a planet. She was defending an idea. What idea? That humans cannot be conquered. That Earth would never fall. That humanity would fight until every last human was dead rather than surrender their homeworld. Kira brought up holographic displays showing the Sol system and the positions of both fleets as the battle began. Tell us about Admiral Han herself. What kind of commander was she? She was 70 years old. Ancient for a human in a combat role. She had been fighting Veltar forces for the entire war. Han had won victories, suffered defeats, lost friends, buried comrades. By the time of Sul, she was more than a military commander. She was the symbol of human resistance. How did the battle begin? Our fleet entered the system from multiple directions. The plan was to surround Earth and force Admiral Han to split her forces to defend multiple approaches. Instead, she did something no military academy would ever teach. What did she do? She concentrated her entire fleet in a single formation, directly between our main force and Earth. Then she broadcast a message on all frequencies in perfect Veltar language. What did she say? I memorized every word. Admiral Han said, "I am Bohan, defender of Earth and protector of humanity. You have come to my home system to threaten my people. I want you to understand exactly what that means and exactly what I am going to do about it." She was explaining her strategy to you? Yes. For the next 10 minutes, Admiral Han described her battle plan in complete detail. She told us which ships she would target first. She explained how she would use Earth's orbital defenses. She even predicted our likely responses to her tactics. Why would she give away her strategic plans? Because she wanted us to know that it would not matter. Admiral Han was not trying to defeat us through surprise or deception. She was going to defeat us through pure skill and determination, and she wanted us to watch her do it. That seems like overconfidence. It was confidence earned through 6 years of war. Admiral Han had fought Veltar fleets before. She knew our capabilities, our weaknesses, our standard tactics. More importantly, she knew what humans could do when they were defending their home. How did the battle unfold? Exactly as Admiral Han had predicted. Our first wave attacked her left flank, trying to force her to extend her formation. Instead, she contracted her fleet into a tight sphere and focused all her firepower on our lead ships. Concentrated fire on a narrow front? More than that. Admiral Han's ships fought like a single organism. When one ship was damaged, others moved to protect it. When ammunition ran low, nearby vessels shared their supplies. When a ship's weapons failed, its crew would evacuate to other ships and continue fighting. That level of coordination seems impossible. It would be impossible for any other species. But humans had been preparing for this battle their entire lives. Every human in the Sol Defense Fleet knew that this was not just another engagement. This was the final exam of their species' survival. What was different about how they fought? Everything. Veltar fleets fight as collections of individual ships, each trying to survive and complete their mission. Admiral Han's fleet fought as a single weapon with 200 parts. When we destroyed one ship, the others fought harder. When we damaged multiple vessels, they supported each other. How long did the battle last? 18 hours. The longest single engagement of the entire war, but it felt like 18 days to those of us fighting in it. Why did it take so long? Because Admiral Han refused to let us disengage. Every time our forces tried to withdraw and regroup, human ships would pursue us. She was not content to defend Earth. She wanted to destroy our entire fleet. Did she succeed? By the end of the battle, we had lost more than half our ships. 800 vessels destroyed or so badly damaged they could not continue fighting. But that was not what convinced High Command to end the war. What was the, deciding factor? Admiral Han's final message. When our fleet commander finally ordered a full withdrawal, she broadcast one last transmission to our surviving ships. What did she say? She said, "You came here to prove that humans could be conquered. Instead, you have proven that humans cannot be defeated. Take this message back to your leaders. Earth will never fall. Humanity will never surrender. And if you ever threaten our home again, we will bring this same fight to your worlds." A threat, a promise. And Admiral Han had the credibility to make that promise. In 18 hours of fighting, she had demonstrated that human skill and determination could overcome any numerical advantage. What was the aftermath of the battle? Total strategic victory for humanity. Our High Command realized that even if we destroyed the Sol Defense Fleet, the cost would be so high that we would have no ships left to fight the rest of human space, and Earth would just build more fleets. The war ended because of this one battle. The war ended because Admiral Han proved that humans fight differently when their survival is at stake. She showed us that attacking Earth would not break human resistance. It would make human resistance absolute. What happened to Admiral Han after the battle? She continued commanding the Sol Defense Fleet until the peace treaty was signed, but, more importantly, she became a legend. Not just among humans, but among every species that had ever faced human forces. A legend for what? For proving that humans do not fight to win battles. They fight to protect what they love. And when what they love is threatened, they become unstoppable. Thexel looked directly into the camera. Admiral Han taught us the most important lesson of the war. Humans are not conquerors seeking to dominate other species. They are guardians willing to sacrifice everything to protect their people. And guardians are much more dangerous than conquerors because guardians never stop fighting. "Tomorrow we will conclude our interviews," Kira said. "Thexel will explain why he is sharing these stories now and what message he wants to send to the galaxy." The studio fell silent as the recording ended. The final day would reveal why a Veltar war veteran was warning the galaxy about the true nature of human warfare. The final day of interviews arrived with an unexpected development. When Kira entered the studio, she found Thexel already there, but he was not alone. 3 other Veltar veterans sat with him, their scarred exoskeletons telling stories of their own encounters with human forces. "I asked my brothers to join us today," Thexel explained as the cameras began recording. "What I have to say is too important for one voice alone." "Tell us why you decided to share these stories," Kira said. "The war ended 5 years ago. Why speak about it now?" Thexel exchanged glances with the other veterans before answering. "Because history is about to repeat itself, and this time the consequences could be catastrophic for everyone involved." "What do you mean?" 3 months ago, the Zephyrian Empire approached the Veltar Dominion with a proposal for military alliance. They want our help in what they call containing human expansion. Kira felt her blood run cold. The Zephyrians want to start another war with humanity? They see human colonies spreading across the galaxy, and they interpret this as aggressive expansion. They believe that if humanity is not stopped now, humans will eventually dominate all other species. And what was the Veltar response to this proposal? One of the other veterans, introduced as Commander Vexel, spoke for the first time. "The High Command is considering it. Many of our leaders believe that allying with the Zephyrians would allow us to regain the territory we lost during the war. But you disagree?" "We disagree because we fought humans," Thexel said. "The politicians and generals making these decisions never faced human armies. They do not understand what they are proposing." "Explain what you think they are misunderstanding." "Everything." The third veteran, battle leader Kext, leaned forward. "The Zephyrians think human expansion is like Veltar expansion was. They think humans are conquering worlds to build an empire. Aren't they?" "No," Thexel said firmly. "Humans are not building an empire. They are building a fortress." "What's the difference?" "When the Veltar built our empire, we conquered other species and made them serve us. We took their resources, enslaved their populations, destroyed their cultures. Human expansion is completely different." "How so?" Commander Vexel activated a holographic display showing human space over the past 50 years. "Look at the pattern of human colonization. They do not conquer existing worlds with native populations. They transform dead planets into living ones. They do not enslave other species. They offer alliance and protection." "Protection from what?" "From species like us," Kexith said bluntly. "Every human colony is also a military base. Every human merchant ship is also a patrol vessel. Every human civilian is also a potential soldier. They are not expanding to conquer. They are expanding to ensure that no one can ever threaten Earth again." "And the Zephyrians don't understand this?" "The Zephyrians are making the same mistake we made 20 years ago," Thexel explained. "They see human military strength and assume it means human aggression. They do not understand that human military strength exists to prevent aggression, not to enable it." "Can you give us specific examples of how human expansion differs from typical imperial conquest?" "The Kepler colonies," Commander Vexel said. "Immediately. When humans first established colonies in the Kepler system, there was already a primitive species living on one of the worlds. The Veltar would have enslaved them or wiped them out. What did humans do?" "I don't know. What did they do?" "They spent 40 years slowly making contact.